to talk to you about what I think is important about conflict resolution, conscious conflict resolution, and why consciousness, becoming conscious, is so important in relationships, in our lives. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a bit of a funny story. I have 2 baby boys, and the 10 and 8 love to play Minecraft. And so my son comes into the room and he was like, "Oh my God, Sahil, you're not going to believe what happened. Nathan blew up our world." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is terrible. What happened?" And this is one of their best friends. And I was like, that just doesn't seem like something he would do. So when I started asking more questions, it turned out that my son had actually blown up Nathan's house. So when we went backwards and we worked our way forward, it turned out it started with my child deciding that it might be funny to shred or destroy 2 of this poor child's rugs. And they're like, "Oh, it's just a rug, Mom." Like, seriously, if somebody takes your 2 rugs, you don't go and blow up their house. And I was like, well, okay, but like, that's what he thought he should come back with. So then I said, okay, and then what happened? And so then his friend blew up the house. Well, then when that friend blew up the house in this Minecraft game, then it was like, oh, well, let's blow up his farm. And so from the farm, then this poor child decided to blow up the whole world, their whole Minecraft world. And I thought, this is how conflict escalates. This is exactly how we are all in our lives, in our relationships. Whether we are conscious of it or not, we are always, until we become conscious, in this tit-for-tat energy. And so I said to my kids, who are really interested in war for some reason, okay, 8 and 10, but they're really interested in the news, and they're really, as children, puzzled, why would any country go to war? So I felt like this was a perfect learning, moment for my children. And I said, okay, so you and your friends literally started going to this back and forth, tit for tat, blowing each other's things up in a fake world. I said, when you are watching the news, when you see these countries going to war, that's exactly what happens in those wars. You have somebody who feels like, oh, this was done to me, I'm going to get you back. Yeah, you want to do this to our country, we're getting you back. And then it escalates. And the thing that you do to get back, often for the person who's doing it, feels justified. But the other side always thinks, oh, well, that was a little extreme. Like, why would you take such extreme measures? But that is how the ego is designed in conflict. This is how we operate. And I'll tell you, I was a divorce lawyer for 15 years, and we had to so often, in my practice, I had to consciously so often advise my clients to take the higher road. And I said to my kids in that moment, I said, so what do you think it would take for this tit for tat with these countries in war? What would it take for it to stop? Let's just take a step back and reflect. And my son said, well, Mommy, you can't compare a war, a real war, to us in Minecraft and what happened. And it's still not justified. And I said, okay, but just for a moment, what would it take? And my older son quietly looked down and he was like, it would take one person to decide that this has to stop. I said, right. So it takes one person to take the higher road and to inject peace. And he was like, yeah, but people are going to be really upset and they're not going to want, like, we are so upset that this friend of ours did this thing, which, by the way, turned out that he didn't do the thing. This is a video game, obviously. And this is exactly how it works in our real life. And so why it is important, in my opinion, for all of us to become more awakened, more conscious in our communication, in our relationships, is because the knee-jerk reaction, child or of countries in war is to get people back. It's to say, oh yeah, you did that to me, this is what you get. And sometimes it's very subtle. Sometimes it's extremely subtle. Even, my friends joke and they'll say things like, yeah, he keeps going on vacations. Next time I'm going, just to stick it to him, right? Like, this is how we talk sometimes as human beings. And what it means to become conscious, in my experience, is taking a step back and being aware of how you participate in conflict. I have probably done over 2,000 legal consults in my life. And I'll tell you, it is extremely rare, almost never, that somebody comes into my office to tell me what's happening. And they include in there how they were also partly responsible for the downfall of the marriage. It is almost rare to none that happens. And that's not a judgment. That's just a really wild observation, because we all do that. Our knee-jerk reaction is that we all do that. We find blame in other people because the ego is designed to protect itself, to defend itself, to put itself in the best light, to say, yeah, but I only did this. How could this be payback? Right? My son said, well, I only took his 2 purple rugs. How could he then blow up my house? Like, that's not the same. But to somebody who's upset that their purple rugs were taken away, they're not using logic to respond to you. They're using anger. And when emotions are high, intelligence is very low. When we are angry, we are not using logic to respond. And so in my practice, for myself, for my law clerks, for my team, for my clients, it was always like, can we step back, take a breath, not respond from anger, and take a higher road? Can somebody put an end to this? And often when people are really upset, they don't want to be the person that does that. What's so beautiful about having a practice and having a mindfulness practice or a meditation practice or a stillness practice is that you start to train your nervous system, you start to train your brain, you start to train your heart into a state of being where being conscious and taking the higher road is automatic. It becomes automatic. It's not something you have to try so hard. You're not fighting against your own grain. It becomes automatic. Do I get it perfect? Good God, no. The other day, I don't know what I did, and I must have been snappy to my son. And he was like, hold on, aren't you a meditation teacher? He was like, consciousness with Rad. Like, aren't you? It's not about getting it perfect. It's about being human and becoming more of that higher self. It's about trying better, being more awake, being more aware, stopping and saying, okay, hold on. What is my participation in this? My husband, bless him, the other day, there was something that happened, and I don't want to identify anyone, but the feedback was that I might be too hard on this person. And when I got the message, I was like, what? Oh my God, I was so crushed. I felt so bad. I showed my husband, and he was like, who's this about? You? And I was like, yeah, no, it's about me. It's not about you. And he was like, do they have the right person? Because this is not you. And I'm like, no, it's definitely about me. In that moment, I had 2 choices. I had choice number 1, which I know my old version of myself would have said, screw them. I did everything I could. There's nothing else I can do. We're clearly not a match. Kick the person's ass to the curb. Just end the relationship. It's fine. It's done. Right? And just like, right? But I thought, why is this feedback coming in? Where did I miss the mark? And is there an opportunity here for me to just be better? To be more aware? Maybe I said something in passing that, didn't register. Maybe that person was having a bad day and I said something that was not about them, but they took, right? there's always two options. There's always two options. And sometimes my clients in my practice used to get a little upset with me because I would say, I know. And I'd let them vent it out and I'd let them have their moment to lick their wounds. And then I would say, but we gotta take the high road. We gotta kill them with kindness. We have to settle this thing. And it will not end if we keep going back and forth. This is what I feel is how we inject consciousness into our world. What it means to be a conscious human being is to be aware. The word consciousness means awareness, right? So how do we stop this war, this mini back and forth in any relationship in our lives? Is to start to hear our thoughts, start to be more self-aware of how we participate, and also when we're given feedback, to learn not to respond from the ego. And it takes practice, and I don't always get it right. But sometimes, now that I can catch myself and I can take it in the chin, it feels exciting to know that there's more, that there's another better version of me, that there was more that I could be in that moment with that individual. And it requires us to have a bit of an ego death, right? Instead of going, oh my God, who's this person? Who's this person? You know how much I've done for them? Instead of saying that, because no one's saying that that's not true, but someone's feelings are hurt. Somebody's given feedback. There's room here for growth. There's room here for growth. And honestly, I was like, okay, I'm game. I'm game. What can I do? Maybe I need to slow down. Maybe I need to be more patient. Maybe I need to be more mindful about what I say to person X when that person, this person that wasn't happy, is in the area, is in the room. Maybe they take things sensitively. Maybe I need to be more compassionate. Maybe this person's helping me grow. I always think that that's what it is. I love you so much. I always think that that's what it is. And I know that 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I don't know, last week, it just always gets more elevated. And it's not about being holier than thou. It's not about sitting on a soapbox. But if none of us jump in, and I know that if you're here, this resonates with you to some degree, because if none of us say, okay, you know what? We got to call a truce. Then we have all these mini wars happening everywhere, in our homes, in our businesses, in our love life, in our world. Awareness is key, absolutely. And so it was really cool because this morning, when they were going to bed, the kids, I said, is it possible that it wasn't your friend? Is it? And they're like, no, Mom, you don't know. There's no way they could be. He's the only one that has access. And I was like, well, but this is a really good friend of yours. Is it possible that there's something missing? Then they started talking about his baby brother. And they were like, sometimes his baby brother, who's really little, will grab the iPad and do stuff that he doesn't realize because he's so young. And I said, okay, so now there's other things here. But if we just stay in this rage and this energy of screw them, then all of a sudden there's no peace. There's no peace. And so I said, listen, someone's got to take the higher road, babe. And my older one, he's such a beautiful soul. And he was really listening. And so this morning, as they were rushing out to the door to go to school, I said to him, Ari, don't forget, have that conversation with your friend. Maybe just say, buddy, what happened? Be curious. Move in with your heart. And he looked at me and was like, Mom, I got this. I said, it takes one, Ari, to just break the fight. It takes one person to just, and he said, if those who know my son, he just has this old soul energy. And he was like, I got this, Mom. Don't worry. And I was like, oh, I'm so proud of these kids. And when they came home, I said, so what happened? And they're like, Mom, it wasn't him. I was like, what? I thought you told me that it's impossible. It had to be him. And they're like, no. This, I don't understand Minecraft jargon, okay? I tune out at some point. And they were trying to explain to me, and I'm just not that bright. So I was like, okay, trying to follow. But at the end of the day, friendship intact, conscious communication, peace, Nobody blew up any more worlds in Minecraft. And like, what a beautiful story. It was not even a big deal. Something that last night was like the end of the world was actually not a big deal. But it takes that openness. It takes that somebody's got to put their foot in the door. And, you know, I wrote lots of expensive letters as a lawyer going back and forth and back. No, we want this. No, and it's like, someone's got to stop. Someone's got to stop. And I used to warn my clients when we used to go into four-way meetings. I would say to them, look, I'm going to go into this room with your ex, who you hate right now, who you used to love, but let's not go there. And I'm going to be really nice to that person. And I'm not going to be fake. I'm not going to be like manipulating them. I'm just going to keep it real. I'm going to treat them like a human being. And I had to start warning them because a couple times my clients would get upset. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to give them a spiel every time we go in the room. And sometimes those clients would ask me for advice across the table because they would notice that, wow, this chick's not a monster that's writing letters from behind doors. She actually cares about me. She actually cares about my kids, right? So sometimes it's uncomfortable, but this is what it is. This is how we consciously create peace, how we consciously communicate, and someone has got to nip it in the bud. This is what my next program is about, and so much more. Primarily, it's about fostering the relationship that we have with ourselves as a means to then be this gateway for peace, this gateway for love, this gateway for this bridge in human conflict, this bridge in relationships. And this is a part of this, right? So we're going to go over different practices, not just concepts, but different practices that we're going to start to integrate with accountability for 1 month. It's going to be a 1 month intensive. But this is, you know, for anybody, you know, we hear the word consciousness and conscious this and conscious that a lot these days. And this is what it is. It's disconnecting from the ego self and reconnecting to our flow, to our heart, to our higher selves, and moving in the world from that energy. And it is a beautiful place to be. So if you made it to the end, amazing. I feel like on IG we all have like very short attention spans, but if you're still here, thank you for being here. And yeah, we start April 18th. If this speaks to you, if this is the type of stuff that you are starting to tune into, I would love to have you there. In any event, I love you. Let's get some sleep. Mwah! I love you guys so much. Please message me if you have any questions ever about anything. We'll see you soon.